All right. Surprise, surprise. This is a little bit of a surprise Q&A. Really just kind of seeing who is still up. I like to be a little bit of a night owl, and most of the things I do, whether it's uploading stuff or writing articles or editing footage or reading books or whatever it is I'm doing, most of the time I do that at night. In an ideal world, I would go to bed around 2 or 3, wake up around 10 or 11. But the nighttime, when it's quiet and I can just focus, that's mainly when I'm doing everything. So just trying to see who else might be up, and got a couple videos that are actually I'm working on. There's 3 I'm working on right now. And I've had to go back and refilm one of them because the audio was not there. But I might just edit that with a voiceover and upload it anyway. But for those of you who are awake late at night, you have nothing better to do, taking a break from editing and also typing and writing to do a little surprise insomniac hour. So let's see what we got. We got Doc Wynn. What's up, dude? You bought your upper for the M4 clone. Let's see, it's a 14.5 inch, but I have a Magpul SL handguard, Knights Armament flip up sight, EOTech. Is it a Knights rear sight? Because what's going on? John, how we doing? Hello. And I am not a sir. I appreciate that, but no. But thank you. Yeah, so if it's a Knight's rear sight, then we're going for a Marine Corps M4. So I guess it would depend what unit in the Marines you'd want to, I guess, emulate, because not every, like 3-5 Marines will do something different than any other type or regiment. From what I know with the Marines. So, but if you want to do an Army clone, which I would suspect, I would go for the Maytech standard issue Picatinny Arsenal rear sight. That's going to have a setting at 300. It'll have gross elevation adjustment. It's everything that you and I are used to. The Knights Armament rear sight is quality equipment, but at least making an Army clone, you'd want to go with the Maytech. It's MA and then Tech, one word, rear sight, usually about 90 to $100, brand new. But you can also buy them on eBay and stuff used if you're dedicated. 14.5 inch barrel. What's up, Ash? Hello. And for those just joining us, I see there's some more people who jumped in. I like to stay up late. This is when I edit videos, read, type, write articles, do things. So just figured I'd do a random little insomniac hour Q&A for those who are up. So yeah, it's let's see, 2:30 in the morning where you are. So hopefully it didn't wake you up or didn't buzz your phone, but glad you're here regardless. You guys can ask any questions you want. I do have a list of things I was going to go over for a quality fighting rifle. There's a number of videos, and you guys can tell me what you want. So I'm in post-production right now, finishing up the AR-15 lower receiver build. I already have a video on how to build an AR-15 lower receiver from a stripped lower into a complete lower. But that was a bunch of photos that I took, and then the whole thing was basically a voiceover of me describing how to build it. But in this case, I've actually filmed every step, so you see it just like the M4 or the Aero Precision M5 lower receiver build. Same exact kind of format, but for a standard AR-15. That one I'm working on. Let's see. Also working on, if I could only have 5 guns, what would they be? And that's not in response to Joe Biden or any potentially impending attempts at gun control, anything like that. That's really like for someone who maybe only has 1 or 2 or 3 guns. But it's like if you really wanted to prioritize everything you'd ever want to do, and you had to do it with only 5 guns, what would be like the most useful 5 guns you could potentially own to try to do it all? So that's a video that I've got in the works. Another one is, home defense guns. What are my personal home defense guns, but also what are recommendations that I would make for, what do we want out of a home defense gun? What features or things do we want? What things do we care about? There's a couple other ones. One that I'm really interested in doing is what makes a fighting rifle, in terms of what kind of rifle is this going to be? Where do we stand in terms of quality and optics or things on the gun, features on the gun, the sling, the quality of the build, usability of it, durability of it? What are things that we should care about for a fighting rifle? Let's see, Doc says the Knight's rear sight was on sale. Always good to have. Is it marked USMC? Because that would potentially bring the value up. Ash says, I'm scared on what's going to happen about Second Amendment related stuff. Lots of uncertainty. But believe it or not, some people may think I'm crazy, but I actually don't think we're as bad off as some might say. And I have reasons for that, which I've talked about, but I could go over them again. Let's see. Give me the skinny on good AR triggers. It depends 100% on what the build is and who it's intended for. I'll use Miss Texas as an example, where we do go shooting together. She does have a background in shooting a whole bunch of different firearms, thanks to her dad. She's not afraid of guns. She owns like 7 guns. But the AR-15, like a year ago, that I built her or built for her, I intentionally chose to stick with a standard mil-spec quality, but standard mil-spec trigger, because with all the range sessions we do and the practice here and there, it's been tough with ammo. But with all of that stuff going on, that would be the primary home defense gun that she knows how to use. She's comfortable using it. It's a lightweight build, between the hand stop, the weapon light, the red dot, the sling, the setting on the stock. Like, everything is set up exactly for her. So that's the gun she's going to grab. If I'm at work, she's home alone, something crazy is going on. And for something like that, didn't necessarily want this nice, awesome, cool guy, single stage, 2-pound, CMC trigger. Kind of want it to be an intentional trigger pull to make stuff happen. Within home defense range at a maximum 25 yards, most of the time that we go shoot, the mil-spec trigger is totally going to do the job. Triggers, there's also a lot of personal preference involved there. So a lot of guys, myself included, can get stuff done with a mil-spec trigger, but it definitely leaves a lot to be desired, especially if we're doing like 3-gun or competition shooting, or especially long range precision shooting. Maybe we have like an 18-inch SPR upper with some really nice glass on top, and we got some really nice rounds or hand loads, and we are trying to squeeze every ounce of accuracy we can get out of the platform. We're not going to be interested in a mil-spec trigger. At that point, you may be looking at a single stage, 2.5, 3-pound trigger, depending on preference. My personal preference is a 2-stage trigger. I prefer the Geisleys. Here's another thing too, is if it's a velocity or especially a hyperfire, CMC, Timney, Geisley, ALG, any of these aftermarket drop-in trigger manufacturers, you're at least going to be paying like $150 and beyond, at least, because we're talking about a semi-automatic firearm that has an advertised trigger pull of a certain amount of pounds, especially if it's a single stage, but it's in a semi-automatic firearm, and we're trying to have something that is safe, but also repeatable over thousands of rounds and years of use and abuse. And that trigger is still safe and it's functional and it's repeatable. To achieve that, whatever company it is, it needs to be really quality, like bar stock or tool steel. The geometry and the surfaces need to be given a little personal touch, and they need to be perfect. And that heat treating and the hardening of the steel needs to be on point. We're looking at EDM wire cutting machines to make the components. We're looking at some bench time of labor, lots of quality control, making sure that it leaves the factory doing what it's supposed to do. So a quality single or two-stage trigger for an AR-15, at least 150, more towards 180, $250 is kind of the norm. And there's really no way to do it without that much production cost going into it. So that's going to be the bottom line up front, but it depends on the build. If you have like a 10.5-inch AR pistol and it's meant for 200 yards or less, probably less. Home defense, close range distances, a mil-spec trigger in that thing is probably all it needs. If we're looking at a precision NRA high power or service rifle competition that is still street legal for competition, depending on what competition we're doing, then we might want to look at a two-stage trigger or a single stage, depending on personal preference. And that's not even getting into the flat bar trigger, to the traditional curved trigger, to any number of different cool guy designs that are on the market today. So last thing I'll say about AR triggers is I see a lot of guys who have a ton of money and they just want to shoot like John Wick, or they want to shoot really well, and they're not putting in the reps, they're not putting in the time, the practice, the training. And at the end of the day, they still suck. So they think, well, maybe I'll buy an RMR for my Glock 19 MOS, and that'll help me be a top grade shooter. And they still suck. Okay, maybe I'll get an Apex drop-in trigger for my Gen 5 Glock 19 MOS, and they still suck. Maybe it's an AR-15. Okay, I need this cool guy, 1-8 power, low power variable optic, maybe a Vortex Gen 3 Razor or something crazy like that, and they still suck. So equipment can only take us so far, but the world's best equipment in untrained or unskilled hands, they're still going to suck. Probably a little less, but they're still going to suck, versus you can take an off-the-rack, standard, maybe bottom of the barrel or standard rack AR-15 with a mil-spec trigger, put that in the hands of a professional or an expert. They're usually going to outperform, by and large, an unskilled person with all the cool guy stuff that he doesn't know how to use, and he can't shoot well, and he doesn't have the fundamentals locked down. So triggers are cool, but we need to think about the build. We need to think about not trying to use it for making up for a lack of fundamentals or practice and reps on the range. But it's kind of like this 5-sided triangle, I guess a pentagon of all these things coming in, and you're trying to achieve that harmony between all of them with an honest assessment of your skills, how much practice you're willing to put in, what build is it going into, and what are we doing with this build. So I guess that's the best way I can answer that. Let's see. What do you think is going to happen in the gun world? I'm hearing no ammo for another 2 to 3 years. Right out the gate, first thing I can say is, honestly, I don't know. The thing is with anytime we've had a run on guns, it's kind of like a self-eating, it's like an avalanche or a snowball rolling downhill that it kind of feeds on itself. And I don't know, you got people who, wherever they are, if they see 5.56 or 9mm, they're going to buy it. They're going to buy as many boxes as that store allows. Most stores will limit to 2 boxes per customer. But whatever the limit is, if they physically see it, they're just going to buy it, even if it's overpriced. We've got some local vendors out here right now that are charging $50 for a box of 50 rounds of 9mm, just standard FMJ practice stuff. And basically highway robbery, but people are going to pay it if they physically see it. You're also going to have those people who are kind of coming into the game late. We have a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, a lot of tech people out here that have a lot of money, and they've kind of got into this a little bit late. And at this point, they don't care. If they physically see it and it's something they want or need, they're going to buy it, even if it's overpriced. They don't care. They're going to buy as much as the store lets them buy. For us regular people who are just simply trying to continue the train, or, we've had friends or family, at least I've had friends or family or, friends of good friends who have asked for lessons on how to use this gun that they just bought, or their brother just bought for them, or whatever it is. Or they have grandpa's shotgun that they've always left in the case in the closet, and they've never really cared about it till now. And now they're trying to figure out how to use this thing. The rest of us are just trying to find ammo to keep training going. Or maybe you only have like 500 rounds of 9mm, and it'd be nice to work up to 1,000 rounds. So we're slowly just kind of building up our stash to sustain concurrent training and things like that. So the bottom line is, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be 2 or 3 years, but the problem with this current situation that makes it so different than what we've all seen in the past is this really started about in March. So, this really started like 9 months ago ish. And between the COVID stuff to the protesting and the rioting and the uncertainty, plus the results of the election and what could be on the future and the horizon, this has been kind of a slow rolling dumpster fire this whole year, most of the year. And, it's ammunition manufacturers, they haven't stopped making it. In fact, some of them have invested in more employees, more machines, more equipment to make ammunition around the clock. So even as we're here doing this live stream and hanging out, there's many machines and people at work just pumping out 9mm, 22, 5.56. Another thing that's challenging is Uncle Sam and pretty much all law enforcement departments, they all want 5.56 and 9mm. So those contracts got to get served on top of the increased commercial market demand, which normally is not a problem, but since most of this year it's been an issue with no end in sight. So really, I don't know the answer to that is in terms of when ammunition will be more available or sort of go back to old times. It seemed like back in 2015 when, people were kind of starting to panic buy, things were starting to get a little crazy when people thought that Clinton she was going to win. And once it became clear that President Trump won, that's kind of when it was all quiet on the Western Front. Everyone was like, okay, fine. And that's when the run on AR-15s, guns, ammunition, it didn't happen, or whatever was kind of starting, it stopped. So it took an event like that to really stop it. And those were the days where you could go even into Walmart, and you would see just a wall of 9mm or 380 or 45, no problem at all, pennies on the dollar, super cheap, and you could buy as much of it as you wanted, because no one else was really running out to like buy it. So, I mean, just I guess ask yourself the question: what would it take for you to go to your local gun shop or any place that has guns and ammo, and you're just kind of cruising through looking for something, and you see that they have 9mm on the shelf, and you feel the need, or you don't feel the need to buy it? Like, what would it take for you to not instantly grab the 2 boxes or whatever it is that you're allowed and immediately buy that? What would it take? Because for me, whether it's work or even our competitors or anyone local, if I walk in and they have 9mm, I'm going to buy it because I want to keep shooting. Unless it's obscene, crazy pricing, which I won't. But pretty much by and large, I'm going to buy it. And I don't see anything coming soon where I would not buy it. So I guess it'll just take more time, and I guess we'll all have to figure out together. Let's see. Nothing against women. It's also new shooters. They have to be comfortable. No one can pick for them. Definitely agree. It's the decision to be a gun owner is, I'm the first person to say it's not for everyone. First of all, with the obvious, from convicted felons to violent abusers and criminals to gang members and stuff like that. Those, of course, are the people I don't want having guns, but I know they're criminals. They're going to get them anyway if they want to. I just don't want them to have it. But beyond that, at least more sane, more rational, more usual is someone who's like, which is a good response, where they are taking it seriously and they are looking at firearms ownership as like, oh, wow, I'm going to buy this thing that, is a weapon, and, life is going to change because I need to be responsible with it. If I have kids in the home, or I'm going to, pre-COVID, I'm going to host a party. I'm going to have friends or strangers kind of hanging out for a little while in my house. I got to make sure this thing is locked up, that it doesn't get stolen, that I don't leave it in a car overnight, that it's not just hanging out loaded on the kitchen counter for, little Billy to come grab. There's other people, I've met people who, after a little bit of conversation, they finally, they felt comfortable enough to tell me like, hey, every now and then I kind of have like, suicidal ideation, or, I'm on all these pills for my depression and my bipolar disorder, or whatever it is. And I think guns are cool mechanically. I believe people should have them if they want them, but I don't think it's the right choice for me. And that's when I'll say, hey man, that's a great, like, I support you making that decision for yourself. And I also applaud you for you identifying maybe it's not the best choice for you to do, but you're not trying to limit others from doing it. It's just something you don't want to do. Totally awesome. But getting to the point, even owning a gun to begin with is not for everyone. It's something someone has to choose to do. And hopefully they take it as the responsibility that it is. Hopefully they seek out training to learn how to use it, to learn how to be safe with it, to be a responsible gun owner. So it's not for everyone. And even then, on top of that, deciding to go get a concealed carry permit, or maybe you're in Alaska or Arizona, or, a constitutional carry kind of state where you don't need a permit. You just go in and go, and just carry it. For those who make that decision to do that, that's even a smaller pool of gun owners from people who even chose to own a gun from the beginning. So whether it's owning a gun or having a gun in the home for defense, or even taking that beyond step of deciding to carry one every day in public as you're going about your day, these are decisions that I encourage people to make if they're comfortable, but I'm definitely not pushing people to do it, especially if they've taken an honest inventory of themselves and decided it's not something that they think is probably a good idea for them. And I applaud them when their own decision making does not project onto everyone else. Because I've also ran into people, as you guys probably have, where it's like, oh man, I don't think I could trust myself with a gun, so no one else should have one. Absolute garbage. But getting back to the point, nothing against women. It's also new shooters. They have to be comfortable. No one can pick for them. Definitely agreed. That whole comfort thing is what spurred that kind of side tangent for a second. But if they've made the decision to own a gun, or they want to have that gun for home defense or lawful self-defense, at that point, the best gun in the world is the gun that they are happy with, they feel comfortable with, they feel confident with, they are actually competent and effective with. It could be the biggest, most powerful, maybe a 454 Kazoo or Smith & Wesson 500 revolver. It could be the most powerful handgun in the world, but if we don't know how to use it, or the recoil is extreme, so we never want to shoot it, and when it comes time to shoot it, we're not placing shots, then what's the point? I'd rather someone have a gun of a caliber and operating system and design that they're confident and comfortable and happy with, that they're placing shots with. I don't care about the caliber or the power. I don't care about shooting fast. I care about shooting well and placing shots, because someone who knows how to run the gun and they know how to place shots and they're a practiced marksman, you throw a 22 rifle in that dude's hands, that's not something you want to deal with on the other end. Versus you hand an AR-15 to someone who doesn't know anything. The weapon system's awesome, but if they suck, I'd rather face that person than the squared away guy with a 22 rifle, So let's see. James Jones, you carry. Good to hear it. Good to go. But let me and what's up, Sabian? Hi, how we doing? For those who just joined us, we're doing a little late night surprise random. For those who don't know, I do most of my editing, writing, and reading, and I guess creative activities. I do all that at night. A little bit of a night owl. So I just want to see who was out there and get this little bonus round. I've got several videos, one of which is in post-production, should be up the next day or two. And then I have a couple others that I'm working on. I'm just kind of adding, editing, doing some more filming, and kind of going back and forth before I have a finished product. But just to answer Ronald Yeater's kind of post there, yeah, you need to get a gun that someone is most competent and most comfortable with. So there's been a number of people, including females, getting back to that. Nothing against women, but they were able to take a Glock 44, 22 caliber Glock, and they can run that gun. They can shoot it. Recoil is totally manageable. They're placing shots. They're shooting well. It's not very loud. There's not a lot of recoil. Pretty durable, quality design, just about as good as you can ever get out of a 22 anything pistol. And they were running that thing awesome. So you know what? It's like, hey, if that is what you are most confident with and most effective with after all the guns that we've shot, all the handguns, then let's do it. Like 22 long rifle is not ideal for a number of reasons, but any gun is better than no gun, especially the gun you're well trained and practiced with, and the gun you're placing shots and shooting well and most comfortable with. So definitely recommend it if you got anybody who's looking for a concealed carry handgun, or wants to buy their first gun and they don't know anything. Having them shoot all the different types or kinds of guns and letting the gun kind of pick them and them gravitate towards the gun that they like the most, they can handle the most, they shoot the best. That's an ideal situation if we can do it. I know gun availability kind of sucks, ammunition even worse right now, but under ideal circumstances, that's something we'd want to do if we can. All right, getting back to Ronald Yeater. Could be dangerous with new gun owners that can't practice. Ammo companies need more machines. Heard up to 5 billion rounds of backlog. So yeah, this year, like, we have had so many holes in our ceiling. We've had holes in our shooting benches and walls. We've had just a absolutely ridiculous amount of NDs, and we have like cameras. So after we discover holes or damage to our range, we'll look back and see who did it and how it happened, and we'll, send them a bill. But at the same time, we have had like an inordinate amount of NDs and problems on the range. Thank God we haven't had any accidents in terms of life or death or injuries or anything. But we've had a lot of first-time gun buyers. There's only so much kind of coaching we can do to set them out there on the range, try to kind of shadow them or kind of Barney style, just kind of babysit them for a little bit and make sure. There's been times where it looked like they were so brand new and they really did care. They were not trying to be a problem. They were taking it seriously. They were just so brand new and they didn't know. There's been a couple times like, hey, we're done shooting for today. Here's any number of courses that we offer that you might be interested in taking, where you can actually get the one-on-one instruction that you clearly need. And not to be insulting, but like, hey, we don't want holes in the ceiling or shooting benches or walls. But beyond that, we want a safe environment. So nobody gets hurt, nothing weird happens here. So we're done. There's been a number of times we've had to do that, but we've had a pretty serious influx of brand new gun owners, brand new shooters who maybe the only shooting experience they have is from Boy Scout camp or that one time shooting with grandpa when they were kids, or maybe nothing, maybe just movies and video games, which is really nothing. Maybe it's airsoft or BB guns, which is honestly better than nothing. But we've had a lot of first-time gun buyers who sometimes they have, Uncle Larry who owns 1 million guns, who's an NRA instructor and stuff, accompanying them and taking them to the range and making sure they're safe and showing them different guns and gun safety and stuff, which is great. I love it when that happens. But more often than not, we got people who kind of just come out of the woodwork, randomly show up in our shop, and they want to buy a gun and they know absolutely nothing. And more often than not these days, when we sell a gun, we don't have the ammo. Mostly we have 5.56 ARs and 9mm pistols, and we do have some shotguns, but by and large, it's more often than not we're selling guns without the ammo. And I've had some people like, oh, what do you mean that you're going to sell me this gun, but you don't even have the ammo for it? I feel like I was tricked. And it's like, hey, dude, I don't know where you've been for like the last year, but what you saw with the toilet paper, same thing is going on with guns and ammo. And it's been going on like most of this year. So, even if your local gas station is out of gas, you probably still want this car. Let's put it that way. But yeah, there's been a lot of first-time gun shooters, gun owners. James Jones, he carries Thunder Ranch. Yes. I like Clint Smith a lot. Never met him in person. I'd like to someday go to Thunder Ranch and, go to at least one of his courses and get that training. But spent a lot of time studying someone like him. And even though he's a Vietnam guy and I'm an Afghanistan and Iraq dude, there's a lot of similarities in the way that I look at things and the way that he describes things. So there's really not a whole lot wrong at all with Clint Smith by the way he looks at things, the way he kind of triages and troubleshoots the situation. And also the fact the dude has been teaching not just like the basic rifle NRA safety course. He's been teaching like how to fight in a gunfight and not die since like the 80s. So this guy has a lot of legitimate street cred, but also from Vietnam to being a cop to what he teaches. And some of the things he teaches, he's kind of learned or improved on over time. Some things, a lot of things that he teaches from what I see are just some age-old lessons that kind of never change with time. And I think if anybody wanted to fast track their lives and move straight into learning how to not die and survive with a gun, if you're being attacked with weapons or guns or whatever, Clint Smith would be a huge asset. And the instructors that he has at Thunder Ranch, I'll say it again, like I've said in previous videos, I'm not sponsored by anybody, different companies or instructors or things that I like. Chances are they don't even know that I exist. I just like things that work well, equipment that is top notch, and instructors who know what they're talking about. So it just so happens I really like Clint Smith and his teaching style, but also the lessons he has to bring to the table. Like I said, he doesn't even know that I exist, and I don't care because his stuff is pretty awesome. So that's I guess what I have to say about Clint Smith or Thunder Ranch. Yeah, James Jones, you're also a night owl. Yeah, I've always been a night owl. So definitely understand that. And just kind of most of what I do that's not working or relaxing, when I'm actually being productive or editing videos, reading, typing or writing, putting out content, most of it happens after everyone else has gone to sleep or most people are asleep. So it's just kind of my style. Let's see. From John, have you seen more people shooting uncommon calibers because of ammo shortage? I'm thinking about tricking out my 870. I have seen people, it's kind of a twofold thing. So one, full disclosure, with Glock just releasing their Generation 5 Glock 22, I've been seriously tempted to just pick one up. I'm not a huge 40 cal fan, but I am a huge fan of having a quality, durable gun that's also in a caliber that I can easily find. So if I could, I remember back in the day, you would see like at Cabela's or some big box store, or maybe a local gun shop that scored a deal, wherever they got it. But you would see like law enforcement trade-in Smith & Wesson M&P 40s, Glock 22s, and Glock 23s. And those guns would be in pretty decent shape, usually with night sights. You could see they have a lot of holster wear, but mechanically they're good to go and very kind of mint relatively. And those guns would be very affordable, $250, $350. I kind of regret not buying at least one of those back in the day because I still don't have anything in 40 cal or 10 mil. But if you did have a 40 caliber, 40 Smith & Wesson or a 10 millimeter auto, you'd be in business. The second part to my answer on that is I have seen people who specifically are looking for 40 caliber pistols or 10 millimeters, whether it's a Glock 20, it's a Smith & Wesson M&P 40 Shield Performance Center with a red dot on top. It's the Glock 22 Gen 5. Maybe we don't see it as much anymore, but we used to get the occasional Glock 23 or M&P 40 or something 40 cal, USP 40, something like that coming in, used or consignment gun, relatively decent pricing. Those days are mostly gone, but the demand for 40 cal has definitely kind of jumped up. So I myself, and I know Range Chris and I are working on trying to acquire, yes, it's a subcompact 40 caliber XD. And I told Range Chris, I'm like, hey dude, it would be nice to have a 40 cal anything because neither of us do. Also, we both have an intense unfavorability, I guess I'll put it that way, of the XD in general. I used to not be too hot on that gun until I started working on guns, and the times I've had XDs or have to repair them, it makes me not like them even more. But a subcompact XD and 40 cal range Chris and I'm like, hey dude, if we can grab this thing, I'll go halvesies on you. Like we can each do half and half and just buy this thing, and we can do a review, make a video out of it, and kind of showcase what it's about and show people. But anyway, yeah, we have seen a little bit more of a demand for people asking about 40 cal or 10 millimeter, sometimes 45, but even 45 it's not as bad, but it also is pretty hard, just like 9 mil almost. Anything 380, same thing, challenges locating 380 ammo. But 40 cal, I mean, since the beginning of this year, when this whole thing really kicked off, we still to this day right now, we have always had at least 2,000 to 3,000 rounds of 40 cal just sitting there on the floor for anyone to grab. Fiocchi standard FMJ 40 cal, and we have no limit, so anybody can come in buy as much as they want of 40 cal. We also typically have pretty decent selection of 10 millimeter, from Full Metal Jacket to Buffalo Bore to hollow point stuff. So it may not be ideal. And when these times, whenever they end, when they eventually end, you're going to be left with a 40 cal pistol that you're not really going to want to shoot anymore. But at least for these times and for the foreseeable future, having something in 40 cal or 10 mil, you're going to have a guarantee pretty much that any gun shop or any gun place you go to, they're going to have 40 Smith & Wesson or 10 mil usually, and they're probably not going to have a limit on how much of it you can buy. So if you want to get a gun that you can pretty much guarantee anywhere you go, you're going to find the ammo for, 10 mil or 40 Smith & Wesson is probably the way to go right now. Again, not ideal calibers, and whenever this ends, you're going to be left with a gun you probably don't want to shoot a lot, and you're going to go back to 9 or whatever else you got. But at least for the time being, for the foreseeable future as well, 40 cal, 10 mil might be something to think about. Let's see. As Afghanistan guy, what do you think when they call our ARs or semi-automatic weapons as weapons of war? So I actually did this on, I think it was my second or third Almanac, basically solo podcast. I think I called it Honesty in the AR-15, which Ron Yeater, I would definitely recommend going back and watching that. But essentially, from infantry OSUT or one station unit training, so at least in the Army, if you're an infantryman, that's your basic training, and your AIT, your advanced individual training. That's all just one long haul experience with the same drill sergeants at the same place, Fort Benning, Georgia. And it's just infantry basic training, essentially. So since infantry OSUT or basic training is everything we did on the M4 carbine was semi-automatic only. The M4s that we had, they were safe semi and burst, but all of our training was focusing on semi-auto, and I never shot it in burst ever. Then I got to my unit. Once I got to 10th Mountain, I realized all the ranges and all the pre-deployment workup we were doing. Still, it wasn't just a basic training thing. It was, hey, we're doing semi-automatic only. You're never going to put it on burst. It's a waste of ammo. And burst setting is not the most reliable thing in the world. You could get 1 shot, you could get 2 shots, or you could get 3 shots. And that's all dependent on you completely holding down the trigger. And there's a little spinny wheel inside the M4 or the M16A2 or A4 that regulates how many rounds go out. But that spinny wheel keeps articulating every single shot you make. So if you were to flip it on burst and you hold down the trigger, you might get 1 shot. So you got to let go of the trigger and hold it down again. And now you're going to get 3 shots. Maybe you shoot like 2 rounds of semi-auto, you spun the wheel, and then you throw it on burst, you hold it down, you might only get 2 shots. And then you get off it and then you hold it down all the way the whole time again. Now you're going to get 3 shots. So burst mode, I never conceptually thought it was a good idea, but at the same time, in training, we never used it. Overseas from Afghanistan and Iraq, never actually used the burst mode. By the time we went to Iraq, we got the M4A1s. Instead of burst, it now had auto, which I do support. And even then, on M4 or M4A1, where we had the burst or later full auto, even then, when we had it accessible to us, we still only stuck to semi-automatic only. And that was not just to save ammo. I mean, you might be in some kind of firefight and this thing, surprise, might last like 7 hours. So you don't want to sit there and just dump all these magazines. And now you have to just hang out for forever with like no ammo. So not only regulating how much ammo is being spent, but semi-automatic on an AR-15, it really is the way. If we want to be effective, if we want to place rapid and aimed shots, we want to make every shot count. Semi-automatic is what you want. So from basic training to getting to my unit to 6 months later, I'm in Afghanistan, to my next deployment, to 5 years active duty in the Army. Never used the burst or auto setting. The only exception was when I was in recon school, RSLIC, at Fort Benning. When you're in a surveillance site, just usually 3 to 4 guys in there, and you got to blow the serve site, or basically these 3 or 4 guys need to make a lot of noise, do some claymores, establish immediate fire superiority, and disappear into the woods and break contact. Then you'd be at least dumping 1 mag and just getting out of there. That's kind of an extreme circumstance. That was our primary battle drill, is break contact, because 3-to-1 fight odds as a 2-man, 3 or 4-man element. Basically anything you encounter outside of like a 2-man sentry patrol, outside an objective, you're the underdog essentially. So establishing that rapid, just absolutely balls to the wall, hit it hard, and then just leave and disappear in the woods, get back to our evac point or link up point. Full auto was actually something we trained for and used, but even then you wouldn't even get through 1 mag, and then you'd start regulating semi and then just disappear. But in all practical reality, outside of the recon community for a very specific purpose, semi-auto is the way to go. So all of this to say that the AR-15s that we have that are semi-automatic only on the civilian side versus the AR-15s that we had in the military in the form of the M4 or the M4A1, Mark 12, M16, Mark 18, whatever, those AR-15s being capable of burst or auto versus the ones we have on the civilian side that are semi-only. One is select fire for military use, one is not. But in effectuality, when you're chiefly only purposely sticking the semi-auto only, and then you compare that to the civilian AR-15, I don't want to say it's the same thing. Mechanically, it cannot do burst or auto, the ones that we have on the civilian side, but essentially, effectively, they're pretty much the same thing. If you bought a Colt LE6920 off the rack, that thing has like 95% parts commonality with an M4 carbine. You can swap bolt carrier groups. There's a lot of parts you could swap, uppers, whatever. The only thing that's really different is the barrel is 16 inches by federal law as opposed to the 14.5 of an M4 carbine. And it has the burst or auto parts in there as opposed to the semi-auto only. So I don't know. In reality, we have on the civilian side essentially the same stuff that we had in the military, and I have no disagreements with it. I wish we could have the full autos, no problem. I'm a very pro Second Amendment guy, but I'm also a very I like to stick with honesty, and the honest reality is the way I chose to use my AR-15, in that case an M4 and later an M4A1 in the Army, overseas and training and stateside, the way I chose to use it on semi-only is essentially the same thing I'm doing today. So the honest thing is there's very little differences of note. So that's, I guess, hopefully that kind of answers that question. Love 40 cal, just can't get any, but just bought a lot of 45. Hey, grab whatever you can. One of the things I'm rocking for a while is, you guys have seen the mil-spec, the custom mil-spec Springfield 1911. I've been rocking this thing a lot more recently because 45 temporarily in my area right now it's not cheap, but it still is easier to find and easier to train with and easier to replace than 9mm, which is my preferred. So I've been carrying that a lot more often these days than ever before, honestly, for quite some time. Let's see. Can we order 40 online from you? How? I don't think we're doing ammo in terms of shipping it. Mainly, we're just doing guns online. But in terms of the ammunition, if you go to like Palmetto State Armory or AmmoSeek or any of the online ammo places, I don't want to get flagged for like helping link to, ammo vendors or whatever here on YouTube. But if you go to any of those places online, you shouldn't really have a big problem finding 40 cal. Hopefully not, but I haven't checked online for 40 cal recently. Didn't know that. Thought all fully auto. Yeah, no. So, and that's what I'm saying. That's another thing too, is like, when they say the AR-15, it was designed to be a weapon of war. That's 100% true. I mean, we can pretend all we want, but again, I'm all about honesty. I'm not about hiding anything. The AR-15 was designed to be a military battlefield rifle. And in that purpose, it does a pretty damn good job, which is my argument as to why we the people, why should we not have it? But the facts are, you had early advisors and some early iteration M16s going to Vietnam, and they were stamped Armalite rifle model 15, AR-15, or Colt patent model AR-15, safe semi-auto. That's what they had in the early days of Vietnam, or even before the conflict started. But the AR-15 was designed by Eugene Stoner, modified from his original AR-10. It was designed for the battlefield. It was designed for the U.S. military and any other country that would want to place a contract or buy it, especially on the AR-10. But yeah, it was designed to do stuff. It was not designed for duck hunting, of course. But that's, I come out, it's a two-part thing. I come out with full honesty, like, yeah, that is the actual history of that weapon platform. But the second part of my equation is, then why would you say we shouldn't have it? Because I'm always going to have AR-15s, whether they're legal or not. I don't care. I'm always going to have them. But I think we the people should. But yeah, when they say, the AR-15 was designed to be a weapon of war, I sit there, I'm like, yeah, you may not know a lot about guns and you may want gun control, but you're not wrong on that. Absolutely it was. Let's keep going here. Really, you have 40 cal or 10 mil. They went as fast as everything else did this time. All 3 states around me. Just checked before I got back in to post this, and it's gone everywhere unless you want 150. Another thing that's kind of interesting that I've noticed from talking to you guys, but also we'll have people from all over the country calling our shop, asking for stuff, and then only after the conversation, like, oh, you guys have like a P365 XL in stock. Okay, I want it. Be like, okay, I can hold it. And then, I can hold it for like the next hour, and then you don't have to worry about driving all crazy to get here. Like, oh no, I'm in Indiana. can you guys ship it? And it's like, no, dude, this gun's going to be sold in like 5 minutes. So I'm sorry, that's not something we can do. But one thing I've noticed about this whole thing from talking to you guys and other interface with other people, it's weird that some places or some locations or some areas of the country, we're all being affected by the gun and the ammo shortage right now, but some places have different things that are out of stock versus other places are doing totally fine. One of my favorite things to do is go up to Salt Lake. So the big Salt Lake, that's like the only, I guess, more liberal or progressive part of Utah. Literally, that's it. And it's Salt Lake, just inside city limits, which is not a very big city to begin with. But if you go there to a gun shop or a Walmart in the surrounding area, generally you actually find a pretty decent amount of ammunition and stuff, because those are not really the people typically buying it. But then down where I'm at, where everyone is pretty gun heavy, it's a lot of stuff is gone. Out here, it seems to be that 40 cal and 10 mil, pretty much guaranteed. Just about any gun shop you're going to walk into, it's going to be there, one or both, in terms of the ammunition. Some parts of the country, like you guys are saying, that you guys may not have the 40 or 10. And I don't know what the reasons would be. Maybe a different age demographic or different needs. Different things are popular in different parts of the country. Supply chain, maybe, but pretty much every gun shop in the United States is using the same 5 to 7 distributors, or ordering direct from manufacturers that everyone else is. So I guess it's just more of a local demand kind of thing. Or maybe it's when I was stationed in Louisiana, we had a pawn shop right off base, off main gate, that mainly pretty much was a gun shop, and they kind of did pawn shop things on the side, but mainly it was a gun shop for all the soldiers that would come in, buy guns and ammo, do FFL transfers, one of the few options in the area, at least within like right off main gate, right off post, if you don't want to drive too far. But they had a lot of Boudreaux, and they had a lot of local nationals. They had a lot of local demands, or these are the guns we're going to stock, this is the ammo we're going to stock, because we have a lot of hog hunters and deer hunters, and a lot of guys in the area who do all this stuff. And certain things they'd only carry because they knew soldiers, we'd want AR-15s and Glocks and things like that. But the rest of it was kind of fuddy, I guess I could say. But every gun shop is going to look at its clientele and what do they want. And if they only have so much every month in terms of budget, like, hey, we only have $15,000 this month to order guns and ammo and holsters and things in. So based on what the people in our area and what our clientele seem to want the most, let's try to order that. So maybe there's a lot of that kind of goes into it. But I guess that would be kind of an interesting study. What things are available or unavailable at different areas of the country and why. That would be kind of an interesting. I don't think anyone's going to do it, but that would be an interesting study. If someone were to study such a thing, I'd be interested to see what that's all about and why. Let's see. What years were I there from Afghanistan or Iraq? So I was in Afghanistan from 15 to 16, and then I was in Iraq from 17 to 18. And then I was at the El Paso border mission, working with the Border Patrol in 2019 last year. So it was pretty much right out of infantry OSET, going the 10th Mountain. We had about 6 months, and then we went straight to Afghanistan. That deployment lasted like 9.5 months, came back. We pretty much had like a year of restarting from ground zero, reinventing the wheel, doing another deployment workup, fine-tuning the team. Dudes were ETSing or PCSing. We were getting guys coming in. Once we kind of had the team assembled, then we spent the rest of the time training, and then right back at it this time, Iraq, 17 to 18. Again, that one actually was about 10 months. Got back from that, and then about 7 months later, no, it was like 9 months later. It's like, hey, surprise, you guys are going to the border for the border mission. And we were like, oh shit, okay. So basically spent all 5 years either deploying or training to deploy, or getting to do some cool schools like armor school, crew systems like our IED, like threat loads and counter IED equipment, doing RSLIC, the reconnaissance, surveillance, and leaders course. That was probably my favorite of anything training related I did in the Army, to all that other stuff. So if I was only going to spend 5 years active duty in the Army, I think I probably got the most bang for my buck. So at least I'm grateful for that. But yeah, those are the years I was there. Afghan was 15 to 16. That was at Fob Fenty on JAF. We replaced 101st, the Rakkasan dudes. And then we got replaced by 3CR. And those guys, man, I got to tell you that maybe that particular battalion or that company that replaced us, but we could see it in terms of they were tore up from the floor up, dude. Like it was bad. It was bad. And unfortunately, those guys got like fucked up as soon as we left. And then in Iraq, we took over for 82nd. They had just finished the Mosul fight, taking it back from ISIS. We mopped it up with the Hawija fight. Before that, the Tel Afar fight, Al-Qaim fight, doing the Haditha gig, doing a lot of that West Iraqi moon dust desert kind of scenario, kind of mopping up there. And then let's see, I don't even know who took over for us, because we were working in Haditha, and we went straight from there to Al Asad, back to Kuwait, like Camp AJ, and then Ali Al Seem, the usual. So we didn't really, but it was only 10 of us there out of our platoon. So we just kind of linked up in Al Asad and just said, fuck this place, and got out. But anyway, going down memory lane. Sorry if that means nothing for a lot of guys. Just going on a tangent with that. I'm a straight shooter, honesty wise, like that. Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it. I just don't think it's how I choose to live my life, but sticking just to the gun control fight or the gun control debate. I, as the pro Second Amendment, pro gun community, I don't think that we're going to do ourselves favors if we try to beat around the bush, or we try to be a little sketchy, we try to be deceptive. I've seen some things like, oh, the AR-15, it's just a 22 caliber rifle. You'd be a fool to go to war with that thing. No, I don't think I was a fool for going to war with an AR-15. And it's not just a 22. I mean, it's a .224 bore. But at the same time, it's not a 22 long rifle. There's a big difference ballistically. So I don't like to throw out things like that, because I think it cuts down the credibility, because you might have someone who's anti-gun who hears you say, oh, it's just a 22 caliber rifle, whatever. And they might actually research that and go down the rabbit hole. They may even be one of these investigative guys or reporters who actually goes to a gun range, discovers this stuff for themselves, understands the difference between a Ruger 1022 22 rifle versus an AR-15. And they might even do their own independent testing and be like, hey, wait a minute, you guys told me it was just a 22 rifle, but you guys are hiding this secret that it's more effective than that. It just puts you in a bad position if you're not being forthright. And that's part of my argument too, is like, yeah, the AR-15 was in fact designed for the battlefield. And in later life, with CNC machining and upgrades and modularity, it lends itself really well to hunting, competition, target shooting. It's an ideal personal defense weapon, self-defense, law enforcement. Military still uses it with no end in sight. Like, the rifle can do much more than just battlefield, but yeah, it was designed for the battlefield, and it's not simply just a 22 long rifle. And I'm not going to try to pretend it's not. I'm just going to be very honest about that, because anybody who's against guns who I happen to interface with or I'm talking with, I'm not going to try to, be all sketchy and try to kind of like hide and smoke and mirrors. Like, no, I'm going to tell them everything the way it is, and they can find out for themselves. I just don't want an anti-gun person coming out and saying, hey, wait a minute, you said this, but then I did my own research and I actually discovered that you were lying, or you were not technically lying, but you were kind of being a little choosy about what you were trying to say. And now I don't trust anything you say. That's never the position I'd want to be in. So that's what I say about that. I've been waiting on that XL for the last 6 months, actually. So we will get the 365 XL, maybe 2 or 3 of them a month on average. No telling when they show up. Probably the most hated question I have. And most of the time I'm working on the guns in the back. I don't do sales, so it's kind of nice to not deal with. I'll come out and help sell guns or help customers when we are completely overloaded, but by and large, most of the time I'm in the back working on the machine guns, working on customer repairs, maintaining the rentals, engaging and checking things, fixing things. But sometimes I'll come out and check, and I definitely keep up with what we got in that day. But the most hated question I have in person or on the phone is like, hey, do you guys know when you're going to get more Glock 19s in? Or do you know when you guys are going to get more 365 XLs in or Glock 43Xs in? No, we don't. We don't. And if you hear that from your local gun shop, they're not kidding you. We have many thousands of dollars worth of guns and ammo bought and paid for, and we're just waiting for them to show up. Whenever they become available, they're instantly going to show up. We just don't know when that's going to be. We don't know when they do show up, how many of them are we actually going to get. Not really, no gun shop is going to be able to answer those questions for you. The best you could hope for is maybe they're still taking special orders, or maybe they're at least willing to put you on a list of like, hey, if you put down half down right now, as soon as one comes in with your name on it, we'll give you a call. You come in and pick it up, pay the other half. Maybe they're willing to do that. And honestly, we're not even doing that right now. I mean, I've had Glocks that will show up because it's cold right now. I can feel like the Glock itself and the box it's in, it has a freshly printed tag, fresh off the printer. The gun itself is physically cold because it just came off the FedEx truck like 15 minutes ago, and someone's doing a 4473 and buying it right there. Like, that is how fast and loose things are going right now. So wherever you can find one, man, I would just pick it up and just send it. It is a great gun. But we actually recently got some Zev P365s in. They're like double the price of a standard 6-hour P365, but the Zev one's pretty slick. But probably not what I would recommend the most, unless you just have money and you're willing just to dump it. But the standard 365 is good to go, and the XL too. Thank you for your support. Appreciate it, Ron. Rock on. Let's see. 02 to 04, Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom, 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, TASH. So we're dealing with some old school cool, some legit old school GWAT. Let's see, attached to Task Force Panther. Oh shit. Got hit helping Marines. I got ambushed, and they med retired me. Glad your Army. Wow, dude. So that sounds like a ride. That was back in the day when deployments were like 15 months. There was like mid-deployment leave. Dudes were getting stop lost. All kinds of horrible shit was going on. That was the early days of GWAT, or the Global War on Terrorism. For those who need that context. So by and large, most of what I had in 15 to 16, 17 to 18 in Afghan and Iraq, that was kind of, it's definitely not that shit was not going on. It was more of a political or administrative choice to not be part of it, or to reduce as much. It was very risk averse from the very top all the way down. At least Afghan was. Iraq under President Trump and General Mattis, that was a completely 180. But at least old school GWAT, that's when shit was completely retarded and out of control. So that's awesome, dude. I'm glad you made it out, got med boarded, and that's definitely good to go. At least that you're still here, everything's still kicking, so that's good. I use my AR-15 and PLR-16 for range, coyote, and home. Yeah, if I could only have one rifle, it would be an AR-15. And if that's just an AR-15 lower receiver, I could do the standard 5.56 upper, 300 blackout, 6.8, 6.5, 22 dedicated upper, or conversion kit. Like with one AR-15 lower receiver, there's so much that you can do with that design. I think that's what's helped it continue to be, at this point now, the most common rifle in America. But as a civilian, being able to acquire and use anything I want, where I'm not just here's your standard issue rifle, this is what you got, but I actually have a choice in what I choose to buy and what I choose to have for home defense, things like that. It still absolutely is an AR-15. Not the only show in town. There's other guns, especially if you're like in California or a restricted state, where having a standard AR-15 is not something you can do. Maybe it's got a bullet button or some funky, California compliant or state compliant features on it. So it's not the same anymore. Or maybe you're just legally not able to buy it. You didn't have one before they were grandfathered or whatever. I understand some guys grabbing M1 carbines, Mini 14s, SKS, something like that. But in a free state with the ability to acquire anything you'd want, for me, it still is an AR-15. That is my primary go-to home defense rifle, period. Let's see. I've been shooting and fixing over 30 years and learned something every time here. Well, I'm glad you do. I don't claim to have all the answers, and the viewpoint that I have is kind of from a limited path. And I don't know everything. I definitely get more exposure from the guns we have for rent, chiefly our full autos from the MG42, MP7, going back to what I'm used to, the 249 and the 240 Bravo. We have all of those. We got M16A2, we got the M4A1, MP5. Like, getting to shoot, but also maintain and work on and clean and repair this wide a range of guns. I always feel like I'm learning something new every day, or sometimes a customer will come in and teach me something, or I hear about something that I didn't know before. And if it sounds too good to be true, I'll even cross-verify and check it. And then it's true. And I'm like, whoa, that's like some old school knowledge being dropped on me. One guy was kind of cool. He wanted me to clean and lubricate and inspect his Browning A5. For those who don't know, the Browning A5 or Auto 5, that was John Browning basically rolling out the world's first successful semi-automatic shotgun. Browning A5 and its original pattern was going on for decades. You can still technically buy an A5, but it's not an A5. It does not work the same. It's not the same at all. But he was telling me, like, yeah, I've used this on so many different duck hunts and all across the country, mainly Idaho, Utah, Arizona, places like that. And, I've never actually really like taken it apart to mess with the friction rings or, really do anything in there. And anytime I've, needed to lubricate it, I've just, pulled out the dipstick from the truck and just kind of put it over the springs and the action and stuff, and it seemed to get the job done just fine. And I always think that's cool. Sometimes I'll have little nuggets of gold like that, or some, maybe it's not something new or a new technique or a new thing I didn't know about, but it's one of those like really cool stories that especially I like talking to the older guys who have, especially Vietnam time in Korea. I've encountered some of them, Desert Storm guys, dudes, or old school cops too, old school hunters, where they kind of talk about the guns that they were issued or the guns they used, and some techniques or things that you only really get to know, and you only really get to hear these things from those who really spent some serious time using that equipment in the field and telling you little secrets or little things like that. Anytime that happens, I think it's awesome. When you have a legitimate old timer, retired cop, Vietnam vet, old school hunter, or guys who went to Camp Perry or did this or did that, and you hear these little kind of interesting personal touch kind of tactics or techniques they would use with certain pieces of equipment or guns. I always think that's fascinating. I always think that's pretty cool. So yeah, but I'm always learning something new every day. Let's see, even when was with gang unit, couldn't believe the guns on the street. Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of California State Senator Leland Yee, who was literally busted by the feds. At the same time, he was pushing SB 249 in the state, which was to ban California's bullet button ARs and make them California assault weapons. So while he's flexing on legal gun owners in California, trying to get rid of their bullet button 10-round AR-15s, he is literally working with Shrimp Boy Chow and the Chinese triad to import shipping containers of open bolt belt-fed machine guns, RPGs, and hand grenades. And that dude was an elected state official in California, got busted and arrested by the feds after being arraigned and released on bond. He won re-election, to show you how crazy that place was. But if you really think about all the guns on the street, things that can come in through shipping container, things that can come across the border, things that can be fabricated, guns, unfortunately, a lot of the criminal element, from what I'm told from law enforcement guys that come in that I work with or know, a lot of those guns on the streets are guns that people left unsecured in their vehicles, left something in their car overnight, got busted into. Some dude takes it, sells it, uses it in a crime, whatever. So that's something we don't want to do. Also, breaking into a house and there's no gun safe, or the guns are easily just open up a cabinet and here's where I expect the gun. Here it is. I'm going to take that. But yeah, you also see really interesting guns like fully automatics, Tech 9s, things like that, Mac 11s, full auto AKs. Growing up as a kid in LA, we had the North Hollywood shootout. So that was like one of those big, just like the Miami shootout or the Newhall shooting. That was one of those big law enforcement moments in history of like, holy shit, full auto AKs, drum mags, just sending it down the street in like every direction. But yeah, there is stuff out there. Keep in mind, we're mainly talking about an era or a time where 3D printing has not really come of age yet, where, Home Depot and Lowe's are always there, but 3D printing is still yet to. I think there's going to be a day when 3D printers are going to be as commonplace as a standard paper and ink printer, whether it was a TV or a sound system or an ink and paper printer or, a mobile phone. These were things that were wildly expensive at one time, but the technology kept getting better and lesser cost to now every American house, most American houses have this kind of stuff. And I think 3D printing is also eventually going to get to that point. Once you have blueprints or files online of how to 3D print an AR-15 lower and other goods like that, once it goes on the internet, it's not going away. And if this technology is going to continue to become more cost effective and more viable for everyone to tap into, and the stuff's going to be online, you're kind of at this impasse where gun control I think they're still going to fight for it. They're still going to try to pass legislation. They're still going to always try to do this or that. But from an effective standpoint, gun control is done. There's no way to. The cat is out of the bag. It's not going back in, and that's not including the hundreds of millions of guns that we already have in the country. That even the ATF, the NRA, the manufacturers, nobody knows who has what and exactly how many there are. Nobody even knows. So, yeah, I mean, they're still kind of getting on that side tangent. They're still going to try for assault weapons bans, gun control stuff, but effectively, it's done. There's no way to undo that for them. So, kind of a weird tangent. Forgot how I got started there. Yeah, guns on the streets. That's right. Let's see. Yeah, it was the first time you ever held a fully automatic was looking at some gang unit recovery guns off the street. Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking I think for me, the first, I guess, full auto that I ever held was like it was kind of like an air show thing. And there was like the National Guard was there. And my grandpa and my uncle were National Guard for many years. So we kind of went, they had like a booth where they had some weapons and, of course, recruiting posters and whatever. But it was an M4 with an M203 on the bottom. And they let me hold it. Of course, it was unloaded. It was kind of like this, I think it was like an air show kind of venue. And I think that was, I mean, it had to be safe semi-burst. So not really a machine gun, but legally defined as a machine gun. That was probably the first full auto I think I've ever held. Kind of going down memory lane with that. I always thought it was so cool. It felt so heavy, but also I was like, whoa, like this is a grenade launcher on the bottom. And then this is the rifle on top. Like this is so cool. And then fast forward to my being in a Rista platoon, my M4, right as I was getting out, right before I got out, the goddamn thing looked like a spaceship. And I might have to try to pull up some pictures of it. I'd have to dig. But the thing looked like a spaceship. It was an M4 A1 with a SOCOM barrel. It had an ACOG with the rear side on top. PEG 15. I had Surefire weapon light on there. And I had a 320 underbarrel. And then I had a Surefire AR-556 can. So by the time you were done, we took this really nice Eugene Stoner kind of light handy carbine concept that was supposed to be like 6.5, 7 pounds loaded. And it became this like 15.5 pound disaster. And I hated that thing so much. The 320, my first deployment, we ran the 320 grenade launcher standalone with the buttstock on it and either slung or like a holster we would make for it. But then by the time after my second deployment, it was like guidance from the company commander down, like, hey, I want 320s mounted on M4s. Grenade launcher is awesome. If you got a dead zone kind of area weapon, kind of leaping over places you can't see. I was never a grenadier, but I did have in Iraq, I had the M250 cal up top, my M4, M9, and a 320, plus pen flares and all kinds of fun shit up there. So, but no, it was never my role. But yeah, towards the end, I just like my M4 looked like a goddamn spaceship. It weighed. I never weighed it, but adding up all the weight, it was absolutely retarded. I'm gonna see if I can find. I don't know how easy I can find it. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know how easy I'd be able to find it. But since I'm here, I'll show you guys some pictures. Not totally linked in with how to show you what I'm seeing on my computer. I know there's software to do that. Don't have it. Let's see if you guys can see that. don't know if the lighting is good. I think that sucks. That's my 240 in Afghan with like a lot of rounds. Let's see if I can get a better picture. That's not coming in really well. But the mountains out there were absolutely insane. Like it'd be flat and then all of a sudden mountains. Let's see. These were the ASG guys we worked with. Yeah, I'll have to do, maybe I'll just do a video if you guys are interested about some deployment pictures, Army stuff, if you guys really want the lowdown on that. But let's see. What the rail believe was M16, unfortunately, had taken out a woman and 3 kids. Yeah, I guess that would be, well, that's unfortunate. But I guess by the numbers, that would be not an anomaly, but compared to how many handguns or sawn-off shotguns are used in crime versus an actual rifle, especially something like an AR and AK, comparatively to the whole statistics of all guns used in crime, not as many rifles as you see handguns, of course, everywhere. But yeah, that's pretty sad. Yeah, I have one of my Berettas, which is in the downstairs safe. I bought it at work. It was a police evidence room gun. And the local sheriff's department and local police, when they need to empty out their evidence room, they have guns that the cases have already been closed and done and finished, and now they're just sitting on these guns, and it's taking up all this room, and they don't need them anymore, but they're just piling up in the evidence room. If the gun is legal for sale, they'll just put out an auction or a bid like, hey, we have X amount, 500 guns. We've gone through and made sure they're not machine guns or illegal guns. So when you buy them, you can resell them. But we have a lot of like 500 guns. What gun shop wants it? And local gun shops will all put in a bid, and whoever has the higher bid, they get the guns. So we won one of those bids months ago. And one of the guns that came in was a Beretta 92FS police special that was involved in an armed robbery. That's the only story I knew. That's all I knew about the gun. And I was sad because our shipping guy, like each gun came in with a tag and like a sheet explaining what it was involved in or what the story was. And, being a gun shop, we're just interested in taking in the guns, cleaning them out, and then reselling them. And I was like, oh man, like, do you have the information? Because I think I'm going to buy it. He's like, no, I threw it all out in the dumpster. It's all gone. Trash just picked it up. But yeah, so I definitely have one gun that was involved in an armed robbery. It's weird though, because it's a police special, which, and I guess it had been sitting in evidence since like 2003. So to get your hands on a 92FS police special, either the cop was using it, or someone had stolen it and used it. So it's kind of hard to tell, but yeah, I think it's about that time. If any of you guys have any final questions, thanks for joining me for this kind of random insomniac late night Q&A. Yeah, mainly just to see who was around. Other than this, the standard Wednesday night Q&A, it's still going to be ongoing, still going to make it happen. And I'm hoping to drop, there's 2 videos I want to drop between now and Wednesday, if I have enough time to get those in and get those done. But yeah, that's something I want to do. But yeah, if you guys have any final questions, let me know. But yeah, appreciate you guys for being here. And the next video that's going to drop is going to be building the AR-15 lower, where you guys get to see it done, as opposed to having a bunch of photos and me just kind of describing what happened. You get to see what's happening, and I describe how I'm doing it. So you can take that stripped AR lower and turn it into a complete AR rifle or pistol lower. So that's going to be the next one. I really want to do video on the fighting rifle. What do we want out of a no shit, all business rifle, whether it's an AR or an AK? I'm going to show examples of both. What we're doing in terms of optics, weapon light, different ergonomic choices on the gun, sling selection, how we're doing that sling. Is it a 1 point, 2 point, or the dreaded old school 3 point? It's not. And what do we want out of a rifle that's going to be like a ride or die, shit hits the fan, this is the one gun that's got to last me forever fighting rifle kind of setup. So that's going to be the next one after that I want to drop. Let's see. You're in Rhode Island. ATF had a Glock used in California gang. No serial number. They put a metal number plate on it. I have to carry it with paperwork. Yeah, that's always awesome when you have like an electro penciled evidence room kind of serial number that was either etched by hand or just scratched or stamped into the gun. That was definitely not the manufacturer's thing. That's kind of funny though. They like put their own metal plate on it. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I guess I don't know what the laws are with Rhode Island, but I imagine you probably want to keep that paperwork on there. The one last story that reminds me of that I'll leave you guys with is we had a dude who got a call from the police that they had recovered one of his stolen guns that he had reported like 4 years prior. So someone or a team of guys broke into his house, and it wasn't like one of those huge fireproof gun safes. It was just kind of like it could only fit like 6 long guns kind of gun safe, but it was heavy. It was fireproof and everything. It just wasn't one of those massive like fridge size gun safes, but it was still heavy. And he came home and they just stole the whole safe. He didn't have that thing bolted to the floor or the walls. So they took the whole safe. And I guess they figured they would just worry about opening the safe later. They just wanted to get the safe out of the house. And it was in the basement too. And he was like, what the hell? Like, I got hit and I came home and my whole gun safe is gone. Like, they took the safe and it was downstairs in the basement. So they must have brought equipment. And I was like, maybe they knew that you had guns. Maybe somebody knew that you had guns. They knew where they were, because getting a gun safe like that fully loaded with guns and ammo, you need like stair lifting equipment to get it out. Like, that's not going to be something you can just hand carry with some dudes up the stairs easily, especially if you're on a time limit. So that's one of those spooky factors of, you may not necessarily want to advertise to the neighbors or advertise to the neighborhood like, hey, there's guns here, because don't be surprised if you come home and your gun safe is gone, like what happened to this guy. But anyway, it was like 4 years after that, he got a call from law enforcement saying, hey, one of the guns that you reported as stolen back then, we actually just recovered it. But we're not going to be able to give it back to you. But you can come to the station and look at it just to verify that it was yours. And then we can take it off the stolen gun list, I guess. And so what it was, this guy was like a trap shooter. He was one of our ATA Trap League guys, come out every Thursday night and compete. But he had a Krieghoff, which is like a custom German trap shooting double barrel over under. It's like one of the top of the line dedicated sporting or trap shooting shotguns that you could possibly buy. It's right up there with like a really custom Beretta over under. One of those European like custom trap shooting. These things go, I mean, I haven't looked at pricing for a Krieghoff in a long time, but these are like $10,000 to $20,000 custom trap shooting shotguns with like the top grade of wood that's all hand fitted, case hardened steel, nice royal blue finish. And that was one of the guns that was stolen. And when he showed up to look at it, and he was showing me pictures, but they had the dudes, the street thugs or whoever, they had cut it down at the grip, and the barrel was now like a 12-inch barrel, and they had turned like this $20,000 trap shotgun into this like ghetto blaster street howitzer. And I was like, man, if they only knew like the value of that gun, they would have left it alone as opposed to just cutting it down and trying to make it a ghetto blaster. So, yeah, that's kind of a sad, but I guess ironic story. But yeah, they don't necessarily know what they're looking at. They just know it's a gun, and they're going to commit all kinds of crimes just making that thing handy for them to use. And who knows, that thing could end up on the streets or get picked up and end up in an evidence room and whatever. Let's see. Most robbers won't touch a gun. I don't know if that's sarcastic, or maybe it's not. I know there's some strategies with, some criminals will commit certain crimes, but intentionally not have a firearm on them, or intentionally do it in a certain way that if they do get caught, they're going to go down for lesser charges, as opposed to like, oh, you brought a knife or a firearm to this crime. Well, surprise, the sentence just got 3 times longer. So maybe that's sarcastic, but maybe it's not. But it is definitely time for me to go. So thank you guys for all being here. I will see you guys on Wednesday night for the usual Q&A. In the meantime, I'm hoping to get at least 1, maybe 2 videos up in the meantime. But you guys just keep doing what you're doing, hold what you got. And yeah, thanks for being here, guys. And we will be in touch. Take care.